So let's talk about the three-dimensional categories. APEST-11D organizes 11 dimensions into three overarching categories. And we're going to talk about those three categories and the specific dimensions under each category that captures the full spectrum of how APEST gifts work. And the first dimension under your foundational dynamics is core motivational drivers, the intrinsic forces that propel an individual's actions and decision-making processes within their APEST gift mix. The second dimension is operational functions, the practical methods and daily processes an individual employs to execute tasks effectively. And the third dimension under foundational dynamics is your communication patterns, the verbal and nonverbal ways an individual conveys ideas, collaborates, and engages with others. And the second category is leadership and transformation. These dimensions focus on how individuals express leadership, drive transformation, and align with broader objectives. So, the first dimension under this category is, of course, leadership expression, how an individual manifests leadership qualities and influences others through their fivefold ministry gift. The second dimension is transformational objective, the vision and goals an individual pursues to drive meaningful change. The third dimension is cultural expression, how an individual interacts with and shapes the cultural landscape within their ministry, organization, or community. And the fourth dimension under leadership and transformation is environmental requirements, the optimal conditions, structures, and resources needed for an individual to thrive in their APEST role is their environmental requirements. Let's talk about the third category. The third category is complex interactions, and it has 4 dimensions. These 4 dimensions explore the dynamic ways individuals navigate relationships, challenges, and long-term growth. The first dimension of the 4 are gift interaction patterns, the interplay between an individual's APEST gifts and the gifts of others shaping collaborative dynamics. The second dimension of the 4 is opposition dynamics, how an individual navigates resistance, conflict, and adversity in leadership and ministry contexts. The third dimension is development trajectory, the unique growth path an individual follows influenced by personal experiences, learning, and refinement of their fivefold ministry gift. And of course, the fourth dimension is health metrics, the key indicators of an individual's well-being, balance, and long-term sustainability in their leadership role. So, why these dimensions, right? Why do they matter for your ministry? Well, it's very important. Understanding APEST gifts through these 11 dimensions is not something new, but it does transform how we approach ministry leadership in several ways. 1, it explains contextual shifts, why you might lead differently in a crisis than in a planning meeting. You're engaging different dimensions of your gift. It reveals developmental pathways. Instead of simply growing in your primary gift, you can develop specific dimensions across multiple gifts. It transforms teams' dynamics. For example, conflict often occurs not between different gifts, but between different dimensional expressions of those gifts. It breaks through growth ceilings, right? Many leaders plateau because they're developing only certain dimensions of their gifts while neglecting other dimensions of their gifts. All right, so to put this all into perspective, all right, let's consider 2 leaders who both test, right, as primary apostolic and traditional assessments. And we're going to walk through these leaders together to kind of get an understanding and a juxtaposition. So leader A, core motivational driver, creating new systems and structures. Their leadership expression, analytical and process focused. Their opposition dynamic addresses resistance through detailed planning. Their communication pattern, thorough documentation and systemic training. All right, are we good? That's leader A. Now let's take leader B. Their core motivational driver, breaking into untapped territory. Their leadership expression, inspirational and relationship driven. Their opposition dynamic, they address resistance through compelling vision casting. And their communication pattern, storytelling and metaphor-rich communication. All right, so that's leader A and leader B. You see, both are genuinely apostolic leaders, but you can see they express and operate through their apostolic gifts in dramatically different ways across dimensions. You see, this dimensional understanding, it helps explain so many things. It helps explain why these two leaders might struggle to work together despite sharing the same primary gift. They would need different development strategies despite both being, guess what? Apostolic, right? They would thrive in different types of apostolic work. Alternatively, the example could show how a single apostolic leader's dimensional expression might actually shift in different contexts. Same apostolic leader in different contexts, in a crisis situation. You see, their core motivational driver shifts from creating new systems to establishing order. When working with resistant team members, their communication pattern adapts from direct to more collaborative. In a mature organization, their leadership expression shifts from pioneering to mentoring others. The value of the 11-dimensional framework, it shows how it provides insights that a traditional APEST assessment would miss simply by labeling both leaders as plain apostolic, or failing to explain why the same apostolic leader might function differently across contexts. You see, with this understanding, we can begin to develop specific dimensions of our giftings rather than just, I'm an apostolic leader or I'm a prophetic leader, but in what context do we show up? And with these 11 dimensions, we can begin to develop ourselves and our leadership capabilities and our teams in these specific dimensions. And we're moving from theory to practice. The framework isn't just theoretical, it's actually a practical tool for real-world ministry. And by understanding these dimensions, we can identify specific areas of growth beyond just developing our key gifting. We can build more balanced teams. We can recognize dimensional strengths and gaps. We can navigate conflicts by effectively, understanding the dimensional drivers behind all of our attentions. And so we can create personalized developmental plans that address specific dimensional areas rather than generic categories within ministry teams. The key with this is this. With these 11 dimensions, we're really able to not just know that somebody's a prophetic leader, not just know that someone's a teacher, but we actually know how they show up in those giftings, why they show up in those ways, where they show up in those ways. It's almost predictable. And with that, we can really, really begin to structure teams, build really a whole lot more effectively, because we now understand how we're showing up through these 11 APEST dimensions. And I want to be clear, the 11 dimensions, yes, I mentioned earlier, we're not creating nothing new. In essence, it is something new, but what it really is that we're bringing language to what many leaders already know, which is APEST gifts. They're not static, they're dynamic. We shift, we evolve, and we change. And that's the purpose of us bringing about the 11 dimensions. We're so excited for you to get familiar with it. We're so excited for you to take a look at our website, learn more about it, read our white papers, read all the things that we've discussed. And it's because of standard APEST assessments that we're able to now go into more mature areas of APEST understanding. So thanks for watching. God bless.